we're going to talk about Cronos, but we're also going to talk about how you can use Cronos in this hackathon, what you can build with it, how you can be successful and stand out among other contestants, and what are the tools that you can leverage in order to be efficient when building on Cronos. So, first of all, what is Cronos? Cronos is the 5th largest EVM chain in the world. Ethereum EVM means Ethereum compatible, so there are EVM chains and non-EVM chains. Cronos' positioning is among EVM chains, so it's what we call a layer 1 chain. It's a side chain to Ethereum, and its two main characteristics are that one, it's a chain that is a kind of spin-off from Crypto.com. So it is a chain that is supported by Crypto.com and that has access to a 50 million people user base around the world. And secondly, it's a chain that is, although EVM compatible, it is built on the Cosmos SDK. And so it's the first chain that manages to sit at the crossroads, as a bridge between the Ethereum and the Cosmos ecosystems, which are two blockchain ecosystems that are very much that are very successful nowadays for all kinds of DeFi and Web3 gaming applications. So Cronos is a layer 1 chain supported by Crypto.com, as well as 300 partners who are like validators, application developers, etc. It's a proof of authority chain, and as such, it is fast, cheap, and eco-friendly. And it was launched relatively recently, since we're live since November 2021. What does the partnership with Crypto.com mean? It means that we're really going after the next generation of Web3 users. Today, if you look at people who hold crypto around the world, you have around 350 million people who hold crypto, out of which only 30 to 50 million are using self-custodial wallets to have direct ownership of their crypto on public chains. The rest are people who have purchased Bitcoin, Ethers, on Crypto.com or one of the other exchanges. And so those users are already familiar with crypto, but they haven't yet experienced the full promise of Web3, decentralized applications, and NFTs. And so our vision and our positioning is really that those 300 plus million users, still increasing, are going to be the next generation of users who are coming to the world of DeFi and NFTs. And we want to make that journey easy for them. We want to bring more users to self-custodial Web3, and we're partnering with an exchange in order to accomplish that. In practice, this partnership with Crypto.com means convenient integrations for the end users. So if I'm a user of Crypto.com, I usually have the Crypto.com app, which is the exchange, as well as the Crypto.com DeFi wallet, which is the self-custodial wallet offered by Crypto.com to their users. And so it is very easy for the user to link those two wallets, to top up the self-custodial wallets using their exchange account. And then in turn, once they are in the self-custodial wallet, they have all kinds of rankings, and there's basically a Dapp browser that makes it easy for them to locate the top Cronos applications in DeFi and in gaming, and to start experimenting with those applications. So, backed by Crypto.com and uniquely positioned to link the Ethereum and Cosmos ecosystems. So on the left-hand side of this page, you have all the chains that are part of the EVM ecosystem. So Ethereum, of course, BSC, Arbitrum, Polygon, Optimism, Avalanche. And on the right-hand side of that page, you have the Cosmos ecosystem composed of chains that are linked, that can be linked with each other using a protocol called IBC, inter-blockchain communications. And using IBC, it's very easy and safe to transfer tokens between Cosmos chains. So we're compatible with both. Our focus is really retail, right? We're really focused on consumer applications, and that means retail DeFi applications on the left-hand side, and Web3 gaming. In DeFi, the largest dApps on Cronos are first and foremost what we call the financial primitives, so decentralized exchanges, decentralized lending and borrowing protocols, which are analog to Uniswap, Compound, Curve, etc. So those are the applications on the left-hand side. But increasingly, we are also seeing DeFi applications that explore more advanced DeFi use cases, such as single finance, which designs market-neutral investment strategies, and Argo, which is a liquid staking protocol. Liquid staking meaning that you can take a token. You can take a token like the Crow that can be staked somewhere, but when you stake it, in return you get a proof of ownership of that token that you have staked, and that token that you get back still has market value and can be still traded or used as collateral for various DeFi investments. And on the right-hand side, we have Web3 gaming. Our users are very much in demand of games. We have much less games than DeFi protocols because games take longer to develop and are harder to develop. But already DigiPals is one of the most successful games. So it's a game where you first buy an NFT, which is a puppy, and then you can, or several puppies, and then you can use your puppies and leverage them in various gameplays. So you can breed your puppies, you can use them to engage in battle with other players, you can trade them, of course. And so all those gameplays are leveraging that universe that is created around puppies, which, as everyone knows, is a effective way to generate user acquisition together with kitties on the internet. And then we have a bunch of other games that are coming. So 10 to 15 games that are with whom we have already signed MOUs or agreements to deploy on Cronos and are currently launching, currently working on their deployment on Cronos. We're already the 5th largest EVM chain and the 7th largest chain across all chains when measured by TVL, total value locked in DeFi protocols. And it's quite an achievement when you think about the fact that we are less than 1 year old. And so for a developer, really, what that means is that, sure, we're not the biggest, but we're a chain where there are lots of users, lots of interest and activity going on. And relative to Polygon or BSC, there is much less applications that you have to compete with. So it's still kind of virgin territory. It's still a place where you can achieve high visibility as a dApp. And so it's an interesting place if you're starting now with your application. We have close to 1 million users so far, out of the 50 million addressable users that we are trying to migrate to self-custody. Depending on the market, we are supporting between 200,000 and 400,000 transactions per day. Keeping in mind, in comparison, Ethereum mainnet processes 1.2 million transactions per day. So we're significant in size relative to Ethereum mainnet. We have 300 applications on the network, and again, depending on the market, we reached an all-time high of $4.8 billion of TVL back in April, and with the market cooling down, we are between $1 and $2 billion today. So now that you know what is Cronos, we're going to talk about how you're going to use Cronos to win the hackathon. And the first thing that really matters when you build a hackathon is to choose what problem you're going to solve. Even before you start spending time on preparing your demo and actually developing the code. So we're going to talk about some of the tips that set you on the right path with respect to choosing the right problem to solve and solving it in the right way. And then we'll become more technical in this presentation and start talking about the tools that you can leverage if you're developing on Cronos. So 5 tips. The first one is solve a crypto native problem. So what I mean by that is that we are in a world that is moving very fast. Many of us, judges of hackathons, have been in this ecosystem for many years. And we have seen hundreds or thousands of startups who have tried to use blockchain to solve real-world problems. While we are convinced that blockchain is ultimately going to help solve real-world problems, we are not there yet. And so integrating blockchain with the habits of regular consumers, or even worse, of regular companies, is too much of a hurdle for you to be able to move the needle in months or years. What we have found is that hackathon winners tend to be teams who focus on problems that crypto users are experiencing now, whether it's because they want to have more opportunities or better opportunities to trade their crypto, or whether it's because they want to be able to do that in a safer way, or whether it's because they want to be able to play games in blockchain that are going to provide real utility to them. So on this page, I'm not going to go through all the questions, but I think just if you look at the page, it's quite self-explanatory. It's a list of problems that other startups or teams have tackled in the past that were typically problems that the judges were most interested in because they were clear, urgent, and tangible problems that crypto users are experiencing today, and therefore anyone who solves those problems is able to generate user traction quite quickly. Second tip, don't put everything on chain. Right? So a successful startup is not ideological. A successful startup does not put everything on chain just because it can be put on chain. It put things on, putting things on chain deteriorates the user experience in quite a big way for reasons of latency, cost, etc. And so what we have seen is that successful startups use blockchain for exactly what it's best at. Crypto is best at the storage and transfer of digital value. It is not good for storage, not good for processing entire workflows, not good for storing every interaction that happens in a gameplay. And so it's important to be really clear. On this page, you have an example of how game designers typically leverage blockchain. So they leverage blockchain when it comes to storing or transmitting NFTs, game currency that can be used outside of the game, as well as to store and manage the ownership of the game through governance tokens and tokens like that. On the other hand, the best game designers typically don't put most of the gameplay or the in-game currency or the user onboarding process on chain. And in fact, oftentimes they try to make sure that when a user onboards the game, for the first 2 weeks, they don't have to interact with blockchain at all. The best game designers try to make it so that users have fun using the game, not creating a wallet for at least 2 weeks before they start incentivizing them to create a crypto wallet and withdrawing some of their game assets or currencies outside of the game. Number 3, so it's an optional piece of advice, but it's often overlooked by hackathon teams because oftentimes they are less crypto native. So when you look at most of the successful applications out there today, they use blockchain also for decentralization of the. They use most of the successful startups today in blockchain have a token, so what we call a protocol token. And what is this protocol token useful for? It's really used to try and incentivize stakeholders of the ecosystem to act in the right way. Because most blockchain protocols are marketplaces that rely on demand and supply of various items in order to work well. A very good example of that are lending and borrowing protocols. For a lending and borrowing protocol to work, you need people who are going to provide liquidity to the borrowers. You're going to need to have borrowers, and then you are going to need to have actors that are prepared to participate in the liquidation process if any of the collateral placed in the protocol is decreasing in value below the liquidation threshold. And so the protocol token is really key to make sure that those stakeholders are incentivized in the right way. Oftentimes what we find is that hackathon teams don't really think about those aspects and don't think about the tokenomics of their project. And even though it's not essential, right, we're not doing blockchain just to create tokens, it can be a very powerful differentiator if you come to the judges with well thought out tokenomics. So don't spend all your time on that, but if you have an extra team member who's not super busy and has some time to spend on tokenomics, one slide about that can be a powerful differentiator. Number 4, design goes a long way. Most hackathon projects are ugly to look at and not very well thought through in terms of the user experience. Also, most graphic designers or UX designers don't generally come to Web3 hackathons. They go to, I guess, more fancy hackathons or more fancy conferences. And so if you have any way to recruit a UX designer in your team, either in person here or through the Discord with people who are participating in the hackathons remotely, really take advantage of that, because having a nice UI can be a powerful differentiator. And finally, you need to, your deliverable is not a repository, even though that's what you submit. Your deliverable is a pitch, and as a pitch, it's really a piece of entertainment that is going to keep the judges engaged. Typically, you're expected to pitch in 5 minutes or less, and it's really important for the judges to understand what is special about your project. I advise teams to start with a quick introduction of who they are, not because we're interested in their life story, but because we want to understand that the problem that you're trying to solve is a problem that you know better than anyone else. And so your introduction has to relate the problem that you're solving with something that makes you the best person to address it and solve it. Second, explain the problem or the opportunity, most commonly the problem, so that it's really clear why there is clear and urgent need to be interested in your project. Next is the solution that you should try and present relatively concisely, because your goal is to move to the demo as quickly as possible and to have as much time as possible spent on the demo. And it's important to try and finish with a flourish. And what I mean by that is, too often you have the problem, the solution, the demo, and then the presentation kind of deflates. And the conclusion is, hey, you see, it works. That's not a great way to differentiate with the judges. Whether it's by a touch of humor or by highlighting one of the clever details that shows how you've thought about solving this problem differently. So it can be anything, but it's really helpful to think a little bit like Steve Jobs when he did product presentations, and always had one more thing at the end of his presentations to raise the level of emotion in the room. So if you can try and think about that as well, it will be hugely differentiating for you. So that's quite high level. Any question before we move on? Since we're in a small... Yeah?
I do have a question on the first element when you said solve a crypto native problem. Does that mean that if we have an idea that does not fall under this umbrella, it's highly probable that we are not going to win, or is this just that depends on how brilliant the idea is?
Well, so the question I just repeat for the microphone the question. So the question is, if the problem is not crypto native, does that mean you're going to lose? So in a Web3 hackathon, it oftentimes means that you're going to be met with large amounts of skepticism by the judges who have seen in the last 10 years that blockchain has been around, hundreds of startups who have failed trying to bridge that gap, unless they have massive groups behind them, like Facebook or whatever, to educate users about their transition to Web3. However, there are other types of hackathons where those type of concepts are very much appreciated. The European Commission and some plug and play, or some organizations that are more focused on corporate innovation will be very interested in those kind of projects. So it's also a question of choosing your audience and understanding the context of your hackathon.
Okay, but so I'm sorry, and then I'm done. But if I need to fill that gap, could I do research and show that there's a certain threshold, and we have data that shows that eventually it could work? Would that fill in that gap, or?
Of course, you can try everything. We'll see on Sunday night if it worked.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I'm open-minded. So are all the other judges, of course. So then comes the problem. Okay, what kind of crypto-native problem are we going to tackle? So on Cronos, we are mostly interested in DeFi and GameFi, or Web3 gaming, as we call it. And we are interested in projects who understand that, given that we're in a bear market, just creating some magic money and betting on the fact that people are going to use your protocol until your token goes to the moon and they'll sell it, that's not working anymore. So in DeFi, it's really about creating a protocol that, sorry, I'm just going to move directly to this page. So in DeFi, now that we're in a bear market, more and more judges and investors are interested in applications that solve practical design problems of DeFi that are going to be very useful when the market starts again. The main problem that DeFi has today is that too many DeFi protocols rely on the protocol token to create early adopter rewards and to boost the yields on crypto invested. Protocol rewards have been extremely powerful and successful for protocols like SushiSwap, for example, in order to drive early adoption. But in the current market and in the long run, we know that they are going to be less effective. And therefore, it's really important to create protocols in a way that any capital invested can generate yield from the transaction fees and the interest generated by users of that protocol. What this means is that there's a huge demand for DeFi protocols that are more capital efficient. And by capital efficient, we mean protocols where, as a liquidity provider, you need to put less capital to facilitate the trades. Therefore, if you put less capital, you can the transaction fees that you're capturing from users represent a bigger percentage of the capital invested. And therefore, you're able to generate yield on your capital from the users as opposed to from the protocol rewards. So that's why we say, higher capital efficiency in trading and lending protocols is really paramount. And oftentimes, if we want to do that, and also if we want to attract more institutional money into DeFi, we need faster and more liquid exchanges, which are, by definition, more capital efficient. And so, any projects that investigate ways to achieve that on blockchain, which we know is a slow technology, will be looked with a lot of interest. And then finally, there are some common themes that we've seen to be very hot these days in startup presentations. And those are themes that make it easier for professional investors or crypto funds or institutional investors to bring more money to DeFi. So it's, for example, protocols that facilitate the reallocation of capital across tokens, chains, and protocols in a more automatic and fluid way, as well as all kinds of security or compliance tools that facilitate access to DeFi for institutional investors. in gaming, there is a lot of interest currently in Web3 gaming generally. It has been the case since last year. But at the same time, there is a lot of skepticism regarding projects that come and claim that they're going to be able to create value simply by creating an in-game currency that is going to be in demand and increasing in price simply through the usage of the game. So what we're interested in today are teams that are able to look at the fundamentals of game design and who understand very clearly what blockchain adds to that picture. And oftentimes it can look like taking a game that you're already familiar with or that you already like from the Web 2 world and coming up in a hackathon with a simplified version of it that highlights how you would transform it into a Web3 game. Any game requires an in-game loop that does not require blockchain at all. And so that in-game loop usually involves players coming in, playing for free, acquiring skills and experience through the gameplay, winning as a result or completing quests, which helps them to gain more skills and experience and more assets and to win even more and perform even more in the game. So that in-game loop is entirely off-chain. It must be entertaining and it must allow the player to have clear progression. Oftentimes in a hackathon, unless you've thought about it before, you're unlikely to come up with a radically novel in-game loop, which is why it can be helpful to inspire, to take some inspiration from a casual game that you're playing in the subway or on your mobile and see if that's something that can be adapted. And then you can start thinking about how blockchain adds value to that game. And there are three main ways that it adds value. So the first way is by making it possible for the user to import on-chain assets into the game, which will help them to save time, win more, or enjoy the game more. Oftentimes, this takes the forms of NFTs that are sold outside of the game and used within the game. But it can take the other forms as well, such as subscriptions, battle passes, or all kinds of assets that can be acquired by the user outside of the game and imported into the game. The second value added of blockchain is what we call play to earn, but which in practice needs to be implemented in ways that are economically sustainable. And so in practice, play to earn can be either trade to earn, which means I own an NFT or an in-game asset that is gaining value through its usage or value in the game, and I'm going to sell it back to other users because I'm through with the game. Or because I've won tournaments or mini battles or quests, I'm going to be able to extract some of the money that has been generated by the game, receive microtransactions thanks to blockchain from that. So here the value added of blockchain is really that whereas up until today, getting paid for playing required massive tournaments happening a few times a year, usually won by esports teams that are very well organized. With blockchain, you can organize mini tournaments and pay back users small sums using blockchain technology without having to put in place a huge payment infrastructure. And thirdly, what's really important about blockchain oftentimes is shared ownership of the game. The idea that the most passionate members of the community, the most effective members of the community, and the early adopters are going to own part of the game and claim a share of the revenue generated. And so that's where usually you can create either a governance token or simply an ownership token that materializes the ownership that some players have in the game, give them the right to perceive a share of your revenue, and will create lifelong promoters and evangelizers for your community because they feel that the value that they're creating as a network is not something that they're completely giving away to the game publisher. So, in summary, when it comes to designing games in the context of hackathons, what we want are simple language and plain business logic that explains to us what is the monetization strategy and how specifically you're using blockchain for play to earn. We're looking at a business model that works in the short to mid-term, because we all know that most games don't make it past 1 or 2 years of life, and still they need to be able to make money. We're looking for practical designs that don't put everything on chain, as we discussed earlier. And of course, in general, when it comes to the experience of the team, we're very interested if there are experienced game designers or developers in the team who can show that the way that you're approaching the problem follows industry best practices and is likely to generate user adoption. All right, now for the more technical part. So you know what problem you're going to solve. You have an idea of what it is that you're going to build. If you build it on Cronos, what's great is that really all the main tools that you're used to if you're an Ethereum developer can also be leveraged on Cronos. So there are more than 18 crypto wallets available on Cronos. The leading ones are the Crypto.com DeFi wallet, MetaMask, and Trust wallet. In most cases, in the context of a hackathon, you are going to use MetaMask because that's the most flexible tool. And if you go to chainlist.org, which is a web page maintained by DeFi Llama, it's really easy to search for Cronos, click on a few buttons, and configure MetaMask so that it adds the Cronos mainnet and the Cronos testnet as part of the network options. All the usual dev tools from the Ethereum world are also available on Cronos. So you are going to be able to develop and test your smart contracts on hard hats using OpenZeppelin smart contract libraries. You're going to be able to access SDKs from Moralis, ChainSafe, or Covalent in order to more effectively read on-chain data in your Dapp without having to index it yourself. And there are various providers of JSON RPC endpoints that are available, even though in the context of a hackathon, you're most probably going to be using the free endpoints that Cronos Labs is providing for you. So evm.cronos.org for mainnet, evm/t3.cronos.org for testnet. Those are entirely free. They don't require an API key. And so I'm going to show you in a few minutes, but connecting to Cronos is just a matter of entering those URLs in your development environment. So let's look at a template project for smart contract development as an example. On the left-hand side, what you have is a very traditional folder structure of a hard hat project with the contracts and the scripts and the testing scripts. Usually, the first thing that you will do is go to hard hat config, where you simply need to add Cronos and Cronos testnet as two network options under the network field using the URLs that I indicated previously. Simply by doing that and then entering instructions like the one at the bottom here, right? So you enter npx hard hat, run the deployment script, and specifying network Cronos testnet. So that's exactly the same instruction that you would use on Ethereum or Polygon or Binance Smart Chain or Arbitrum or Optimism. And just by doing that, you're able to deploy your smart contract to Cronos testnet. If you need a faucet, you go to cronos.org/faucet. Entering your wallet address will allow you to receive 50 test CROs that will pay for your deployment costs, your deployment transaction fees, as well as any transaction fees that you may need for your demo. And then finally, when it comes to the Dapp itself, so here I have simple React application. So on the left-hand side, you can see that it's a fairly standard React folder structure. The library that most developers are going to use to develop dApps in the front end is called ethers.js, and it works perfectly with Cronos. And again, the only thing that you have to do is to configure the config variables with the RPC URL, the chain ID, and the other details. And everything is going to work exactly like it works on Ethereum. The one additional piece of tooling that is really interesting on Cronos is what we call Cronos Play. So Cronos Play is a series of integrations and tools that make it easier for game developers to add blockchain or crypto functionalities into traditional games, whether those games are web games, Unreal games, or Unity games, or C++ games. And so there are plugins and SDKs for all those languages and environments. You can find them by going to cronos.org/play and then navigating to either Unity or Unreal or C++, depending on the environment that you're using. And I will finish by showing you, what this kind of tooling makes possible. Right? So here, in the video that I'm going to show, you have a demonstration of a very, very simple game that uses blockchain on Cronos. So here we're starting with an NFT store. We have created some NFTs. Here you can see a shield as well as shoulder pads. We're outside of the game and we have created and assigned those NFTs to the user. Then we move to the game, and when we enter the game, the user is prompted to log in with their MetaMask account in the browser. Now, clearly this is not a best practice because, as I said earlier, ideally you want to hook the user for 2 weeks before you start introducing crypto wallets and the complexities associated with Web3. But for the sake of this demo, we just do it up front. So we allow the user to connect to their account in MetaMask, which allows the game to then query their balance and display their wallet address as well as their token balance at the top of the screen. Here you can see that the balance of the user has increased from 29 to 79. So it's an example of situation where we have, for example, given a daily allowance to the user for playing the game in the context of achieving certain quests or winning certain tournaments. So within the game and using those SDKs, you can simply top up the wallet of the user at certain points in the gameplay. Then you can be in a situation where, in order to access a restricted area or a tournament, the user needs to pay to cross a bridge and enter a more exclusive place. And so here, again, what the SDK does is very simple. It allows you to trigger a transaction from within the game, which opens the MetaMask wallet, prompts the user to sign a transaction, and then subsequently you are able to monitor within the game that the transaction has been completed and the user balance has decreased. And then finally, what the SDK allows you to do is to import those NFTs that we saw earlier in the game and give them presence in the game. So here you can see that the helmet that was an NFT previously has been imported into the game because we know that it's owned by the user. The user is able to find it, and by coming close to it, wear it and add it to the assets that they're using to perform in the game. And later on, you're going to see that we also have the shoulder pads that the user is able to use to complete their protections. So in the end, it's very simple, right? Blockchain is not going to make your game completely different. It's going to add specific features in the game that facilitate monetization, create a connection between in-game assets and and out of the game possessions, and can give the users shared ownership of the game. But for all of this to work, you still need to have a game loop that is entertaining and is going to prompt the users to come back and have fun. In summary, why would you build on Cronos? First and foremost, because it's a way to access an addressable base of 50 million users. Secondly, because those users are very much in demand of more DeFi and Web3 gaming applications. And because it's a relatively new chain, there's not a huge amount of competition for you. From a technology standpoint, we're really practical. We took the best of the Ethereum and the Cosmos world. We're not trying to build walled gardens or never seen before technology. We're just trying to take something that works, is open source and has been developed by the community, and put it in the hands of the developers. Because of the connection with Ethereum, Cosmos, and other ecosystems, on Cronos you can find almost any of the world's top 50 cryptocurrencies from various ecosystems and use them all together in DeFi protocols. And finally, there is Cronos Labs, which is Ella at the back of this room, as well as me and a bunch of other people whose job it is to promote the Cronos ecosystem and make the life of developers easier. So we have various support programs, from an incubator to our participation and sponsorship in hackathons, to a grad program, an accelerator program, and strategic partnerships, all deployed according to various amounts, depending on the maturity of applicants. On this hackathon, we have a 10,000 euro prize split between 4 winners. So 4,000 euros for the winner, and then 3 2,000 euro prizes each for anyone who develops a DeFi or Web3 gaming application and deploys it on Cronos. And like I showed you, deploying it on Cronos is a step that is not very time consuming, and you can deploy your application on multiple networks, in which case you can be eligible for multiple prizes. If you want to continue the journey with us, we also have a gaming and metaverse hackathon, which is currently open for application. We're organizing it together with Moralis, one of the leading cloud infrastructure provider and SDK provider for Web2 game developers who are trying to develop Web3 games. And so, yeah, if you go to chronoslabs.org, you will under programs, you will see a reference to that hackathon, which is starting in the middle of August until middle of September. It's a virtual hackathon, and there are close to 100,000 euros of prizes available for that. So, yeah, that's it for today. And we can take a few more questions, if you have any.
Does it have a good remix? Can you use remix on Cronos?
So I've never tried it, so I'm not sure. So what I mean is, I usually use Remix just to write the smart contracts and then check that it compiles properly and see what are the errors. But then I usually copy and paste my code into Hard Hat, which is where I complete the tests and deploy it. So I haven't. It's possible, but I haven't tried it.
I expect it does, because it doesn't need a Hard Hat plugin or anything, right? Just the RPC.
Correct.
So it's probably working really well.
Okay. All right. Thanks a lot for your time, and good luck with the hackathon.
Thank you. Hey, guys, I have many ideas. I think we should meet now outside maybe or
Yeah.
something. What, yeah.
Why don't we stay here?
Yeah.
I thought we stay here.
Yeah,